The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm golden hue over the empty parking lot. As I pulled in, I was greeted by an expansive stretch of asphalt, devoid of any other vehicles. The stillness enveloped me, creating a sense of peace that felt almost rare in today's bustling world. Sparse patches of grass peeked through the cracks in the pavement, and a few scattered leaves danced gently in the light breeze. The quiet was soothing, providing a perfect backdrop for my brief stop. In the distance, the faint sounds of city life buzzed, but here it felt like time had slowed down. I took a moment to breathe deeply, appreciating the solitude that this hidden gem offered amidst the chaos outside. It was a stark contrast to the busy streets I had just navigated. No honking horns or impatient drivers, just me and this serene space. As I stepped out of my car, relishing the moment, I couldn't help but feel a sense of freedom. It was one of those rare instances where everything seemed aligned perfectly. No distractions, no rush. Little did I know that this peaceful interlude was about to be shattered. The tranquility of this empty lot would soon give way to an unexpected confrontation that would test my composure and challenge my understanding of public spaces. But for now, I stood there, enjoying the calm before the storm. As I sat in my car, I quickly weighed my options. I had just left a busy meeting downtown and needed a moment to gather my thoughts before heading to my next appointment. The empty lot had caught my eye. It was a welcome sight amidst the typical chaos of urban parking. It was conveniently located just a block from where I needed to go, and with no other cars around, it seemed like the perfect place for a brief stop. I glanced at the clock on my dashboard. Time was ticking away, and I didn't want to be late. Pulling into that lot felt like a lifeline. It offered both proximity and peace. I could easily take a few minutes to collect myself without the pressure of navigating through crowded streets or searching for an elusive parking spot. Besides, I told myself, it was a public lot. There were no signs indicating restrictions, and the absence of any other vehicles gave the impression that it was free for use. I figured I could park, take a deep breath, and maybe even sip some water before getting back on the road. Little did I know, the seemingly innocent decision would soon spark an unexpected confrontation that would challenge my understanding of politeness in public spaces. For now, though, all I wanted was to enjoy this fleeting moment of clarity before the day swept me away again. As I sat in my car, savoring the quiet moment, I noticed a figure approaching from the far end of the lot. She was a middle-aged woman, impeccably dressed in a bright floral blouse and crisp white pants that seemed out of place in the otherwise subdued atmosphere. Her perfectly styled hair framed her face, but it was the expression on her face that caught my attention, a mix of irritation and determination. She marched toward me with purpose, her heels clicking sharply against the pavement, cutting through the tranquility like a knife. The moment she reached my car, her demeanor shifted from casual to confrontational. Her arms crossed tightly over her chest, and her brows knitted together in an unmistakable scowl. It was clear from the onset that she wasn't here for a friendly chat. Without any greeting or introduction, she pointed an accusatory finger at me. "Do you realize you're taking up space in this lot?" Her voice was sharp and loud, echoing off the empty walls surrounding us. The tone was one of entitlement, as if she believed her presence alone had granted her authority over this public area. I felt a wave of confusion wash over me. I had chosen this lot precisely because it was empty and quiet, thinking I could enjoy a brief respite. But here was this woman, ready to unleash her displeasure on me without hesitation. My calm moment was quickly unraveling before my eyes, replaced by a rising tension I hadn't anticipated. "Excuse me, but do you mind telling me what you think you're doing?" she demanded, her voice rising above the gentle rustle of leaves. I blinked, momentarily taken aback by her abruptness. It felt as if she had emerged from nowhere, fueled by an unyielding indignation. "I'm just parked here for a few minutes," I replied, trying to keep my tone calm, hoping to defuse the situation before it escalated further. But she wasn't having it. Her eyes narrowed, and she stepped closer, invading my personal space. "This isn't a place for loitering," she exclaimed, her voice dripping with authority. "You can't just park anywhere you please. This lot is meant for customers of the nearby shops." She gestured wildly toward the street beyond the lot, as if to emphasize her point. "Don't you see that? I glanced around, noticing stillness all around us. There were no signs indicating restrictions or any visible businesses that could be affected by my presence. "But it's empty," I said softly, attempting to reason with her. "There's no one else here." Her expression hardened as she continued to berate me, raising her voice even more. "That doesn't matter. You're taking up space that someone else might need." Each word was punctuated with a wave of her hand, as if she were conducting an orchestra of outrage. The confrontation was escalating into something I hadn't expected, and I braced myself for what would come next. As her words pierced the air like arrows, I felt a mixture of surprise and confusion wash over me. I had parked in what I believed was an innocuous spot to catch my breath, not to provoke a confrontation. My heart raced slightly as I processed her accusations, and I found myself grappling with an unexpected annoyance. How could someone be so hostile over something so trivial? In that moment, my mind raced through a whirlwind of emotions. Part of me wanted to laugh at the absurdity of the situation. After all, we were in an empty parking lot. But the other part, a part that craved peace and resolution, felt a rising urge to defend myself. As she continued her tirade, I realized that engaging in a shouting match wouldn't help matters. It would only fuel the fire. I took a deep breath, attempting to steady my nerves. "Look, I'm not trying to cause any trouble," I finally said, my voice steady despite the tension surrounding us. "I just needed a moment before I head out." As I spoke, I hoped to convey sincerity rather than defensiveness. Yet, even as I tried to maintain my composure, I could feel anger simmering beneath the surface. Why was this woman so determined to make me feel unwelcome in a public space? The entire encounter felt surreal, and as she glared at me with unwavering intensity, I knew that whatever happened next would define how this day would unfold. As I stood my ground, hoping to defuse the situation, the Karen seemed to take my calmness as a challenge. Her voice grew louder, echoing through the empty lot like a siren. "You think you can just park here and do whatever you want? This is ridiculous." She waved her arms dramatically, drawing attention from passers-by who began to pause and stare. I glanced around, noticing a couple people walking by who now slowed their pace, their eyes darting between us. A knot tightened in my stomach as I felt their curiosity shift toward me, the unintended focus of this public spectacle. The Karen's volume escalated further, and I could sense the weight of her accusations hanging in the air like a dark cloud. "You're making a mockery of this whole place," she continued, her voice rising to nearly a shout. "There are rules for a reason. What if someone needed that space? You're being selfish." With each word, she painted me as a villain in her narrative, and I could feel the heat of embarrassment creeping up my neck. The situation had transformed from a simple misunderstanding into a full-blown confrontation. Onlookers began to murmur. Some exchanged glances of disbelief, while others looked on with mild amusement. I felt the pressure mounting as more people joined the audience, their stares adding an uncomfortable layer to an already tense exchange. Caught in this escalating conflict, I knew I had to respond. But how could I possibly defend myself against such fervent outrage without escalating the situation even further? The stakes were rising, and I was acutely aware that my next words would either calm or ignite this firestorm. As the confrontation continued to escalate, I could feel the eyes of bystanders weighing heavily on me. A few people paused, their faces a mix of curiosity and mild amusement, as if they were watching an unexpected performance unfold. One man, casually dressed in a baseball cap and shorts, leaned against a nearby car with an amused smirk, clearly entertained by the spectacle. Conversely, a woman pushing a stroller glanced over with a furrowed brow. She seemed concerned, her body tense as she watched the Karen unleash her tirade. I could sense her sympathy leaning toward me, as if she understood the absurdity of the situation. Another couple further down the lot whispered among themselves, their expressions unreadable. Was it indifference or quiet support? Yet, amidst the mix of reactions, I also noticed someone nodding in agreement with the Karen. An older gentleman with a stern demeanor crossed his arms and shot me a disapproving look, as if I were the one causing trouble. His presence added to my anxiety. It felt like I was being judged by an invisible jury. The growing audience only intensified the pressure I felt. I wanted to resolve the situation quickly and exit this awkward spotlight, but now I was acutely aware that every word I uttered would be scrutinized. The earlier tranquility of the empty lot had morphed into a charged environment filled with opinions and judgments, making it increasingly difficult to navigate this absurd confrontation. With every passing moment, I felt more trapped in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions and expectations. As I stood there, grappling with the escalating confrontation, I couldn't help but reflect on the broader societal norms that seemed to underpin this entire incident. The Karen stereotype, a term that had recently emerged in popular culture, represented more than just an overly entitled individual. It embodied a clash of expectations and perceptions in public spaces. Parking lots, often seen as mundane and utilitarian, held unspoken rules. There were unwritten codes about who could occupy a space and for how long. In this case, I had unknowingly crossed a boundary. My innocent decision to park in an empty lot had triggered a response rooted in a collective sense of ownership and entitlement that some people feel towards shared spaces. The Karen was acting as if my presence was an affront to her rights, demanding adherence to her interpretation of acceptable behavior. This incident highlighted the delicate balance between personal freedom and the expectations of others. In our increasingly crowded world, people often project their frustrations onto strangers, creating tension where none should exist. It made me ponder how societal pressures mold our interactions, urging us to conform to an unwritten set of rules that sometimes feel absurd. As I faced the Karen, I realized this moment was more than just a personal confrontation. It was a reflection of how we navigate public spaces and the varying interpretations of respect and ownership within them. While I sought peace and solitude, she sought control, a reminder that our perceptions can drastically shape our interactions in ways we often overlook. As the confrontation reached its peak, I sensed that the moment of resolution was upon us. The air crackled with tension, and I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what would come next. "Listen," I said, my voice steady despite the chaos swirling around us. "I'm not trying to disrupt anything. I just needed a few minutes to gather my thoughts before heading back out." For a brief moment, her expression softened, and I could see the gears turning in her mind. The crowd remained silent, hanging on our words, waiting to see how this would play out. "Well, you're still taking up space that could be used by others," she retorted, but her tone had lost some of its earlier bite. I decided to take a different approach. "How about this? I'll pull out in a minute if it's really bothering you," I offered, hoping to find some common ground. "But can we agree that there's no harm in me being here for just a few more moments?" To my surprise, she hesitated, caught off guard by my willingness to compromise. After a tense pause, she sighed heavily, her shoulders dropping slightly as if the weight of her indignation had become too much to bear. "Fine," she muttered, clearly frustrated but willing to relent. With that small concession, the atmosphere shifted. I felt an immediate release of tension as the crowd began to disperse. As I prepared to start my engine, I realized that sometimes standing your ground doesn't mean escalating the conflict. Sometimes it means finding a way to meet in the middle, even with someone who seemed determined to create chaos. As I pulled away from the lot, I couldn't shake the experience from my mind. What had started as a simple moment of respite had morphed into an unexpected confrontation, leaving me with a swirl of emotions. This incident served as a stark reminder of the unpredictability of public interactions. You can never fully anticipate how someone else will react, especially when they feel their space or authority is being threatened. Reflecting on the encounter, I recognize the importance of maintaining composure in the face of unreasonable behavior. It would have been easy to lash out in frustration or defensiveness, but responding with calmness transformed the situation. Rather than escalating the conflict, I found a way to communicate and diffuse tension, however briefly. It reinforced the idea that sometimes the best response is one rooted in understanding rather than anger. This experience also highlighted how societal norms can shape our interactions in unexpected ways. A parking lot might seem trivial, but became a stage for deeper issues surrounding entitlement and personal space. I learned that while we all navigate our daily lives, we must remain aware of how our actions affect others and how theirs can impact us. Ultimately, it was a lesson in patience and perspective. In an age where conflicts can erupt over the smallest things, maintaining one's composure and seeking common ground may lead to unexpected resolutions. As I continued my day, I carried this newfound understanding with me, a reminder to approach each interaction with empathy and an open mind, no matter how chaotic it may seem at first.